Today we're going to be taking apart and fixing the Honor 5X from Huawei. I'll show you how to replace the screen, the charging port, and all the different components inside. You will need a size T3 bit for this. I will link all of the parts down in the video description as well as the tools that you'll need. There are 2 screws at the bottom. These are the only 2 screws that you will need the T3 bit for. Remove the SIM card trays from the side of the device, and then once those screws and trays are out, you'll be able to take a pry tool and pry between the back metal frame and the screen. Make sure you do evenly all around the outside. You'll see all the clasps here in a second. Here's the back panel of the phone. You can see a little bit of foam around the back panel for the battery and for the fingerprint scanner. It is a metal and plastic mix. Another nice thing about Huawei is they put little arrows on all their metal components so you know what direction is up when you're repairing it. There's 1 screw at the side for the battery port and the screen port. There's like little Lego connections where you can just unsnap them from the motherboard. There's 2 screws holding down the little metal bracket for the extension ribbon cable that goes down to the charging port. Unscrew that and remove it. Make sure you keep all your screws organized. There are 6 screws down here for the plastic bracket. Remove those and lift that up. This is also the loudspeaker for the phone. There's the 2 contact points that just rest on top of the charging port so it'll get its signal. There's 1 wire cable also attached to the charging port, and then the bottom of the extension ribbon cable. Now that that's snapped off, you can set that off to the side. The charging port itself is glued down to the frame of the phone. You can lift that off. On the back side of the charging port, you can see the microphone that's also there. Now for the battery, it is interesting. There is 1 pull tab that will remove the adhesive from 1/4 of the battery, but there's still permanent adhesive on all the other 3 corners. So it's interesting that they would have the pull tab there in the first place. Lift that off. Make sure when you're prying it out, do not damage that screen cable right there. I've unsnapped it from the motherboard, especially if you need to reuse your screen or if you're just doing this repair to replace the battery. There's 5 screws on the top of the motherboard, and then the power button and volume buttons are plugged in here to the side. You just lift up the back of the little clasp and then you can slide out the connector for the volume and power buttons. There's 1 plastic bracket up at the top of the phone. Set that off to the side, keeping your screws organized. Then the top of the wire cable unclips and the motherboard can slide out of the frame. It also has a funky little hat, just like the Nexus 6P. And then the front-facing camera can unclasp from the motherboard, just like a little Lego. Same thing with the rear-facing camera. Just unsnap that. The top camera, the front-facing camera, is a 5 megapixel, and the rear camera is a 13 megapixel. I'm just going to snap those back into the motherboard, placing them over the connection and pressing them gently into place. You'll feel them click down, just like a Lego. Now here is the screen of the phone. It has the plastic back, then the LCD, and then the glass on top. So this is the part that you'll buy when you crack your screen or your LCD. You'll just have to transfer over the vibrator and the earpiece to your new screen and then put them back into place. Luckily for the Honor 4X right now, the screens are only about $30. So hopefully these prices are the same for the Honor 5X when they become available. I will link those down in the video description as soon as they become available. I'm going to go ahead and put the motherboard back into place, snapping down the screen ribbon cable and the wire cable onto the bottom of the motherboard right there, and then plugging in the power and volume buttons. Make sure you do this or else the power button will not function. This is the only communication it has with the motherboard. Lock it down into place with the plastic bit. Then there's those 5 screws, get those back into the motherboard as well. Then down here at the bottom of the phone, we're going to set the charging port into place. And then I'm going to connect the bottom portion of the extension ribbon cable and then set the battery down underneath the fingerprint scanner. And then I can set the extension ribbon cable on top. You can see here that I forgot to plug in my wire cable. Make sure you do that on your phone before you set the black plastic bit down in. There's 6 screws down there along the bottom, and then the top of the extension ribbon cable needs to be plugged into the motherboard, as well as the battery. Get those 2 screws and bracket in place, and then the 1 screw and then this bracket over the battery connection. Then I'm going to turn on the phone to make sure everything's functioning before I put the back cover on. Everything looks good. Now my back cover is a little bit bent from a bin test video I did a second ago. I will link that here as well. So I'm going to bend that back into place. Since metal's bent, it never goes back perfect, but I think I got it pretty close. I'm going to put the screen and the phone back into the metal housing and then clasp it down around the outside. Everything looks like it's working. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. Make sure to like if this video helped you, and all the behind the scenes stuff on my Instagram and Twitter. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you around.